Good evening. How is everybody doing? Welcome to Alan's Music Room here on Facebook Live and on YouTube. Thanks for joining in tonight. We have a great topic that we're talking about, 40 years of Duran Duran. We are 2 days away from the 40th anniversary of the release of their first album. And we're going to be talking about their career, their influence, the changes that have gone on through the 4 decades. And we've got so much to talk about with a couple of very special guests. Before we get into the guests, though, I would like to say that, first of all, we've got a couple of some upcoming shows that I want to tell you about. Next week, I'm going to be doing, had to reschedule it from a couple of weeks ago, but I'm going to be doing the SNL musical guests episode that I've been talking about for weeks. I can't wait to get to it. We're going to be talking about different musical guests throughout the SNL's 46 years, some of the standouts, some of the ones that weren't so successful. We're going to be talking about musical guests or musicians as hosts. We're going to be talking about some skits that either lampooned certain musicians or featured musicians. It's going to be a big topic. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the week after that, on June 27th, we're going to be talking about musical conspiracy theories. I am very excited about that. There's lots of stuff that we can talk about. And I've got somebody who has done a lot of research on the Paul is dead topic. So you'll be hearing about that most definitely. I've got a couple of ones, and I'm going to get a couple of other guests who've got some other stories to tell us too. And after that is July 4th. And I think I will not be doing a show that week because I will be on vacation. We'll have to see. But so far, for the moment, I've got the SNL musical guests coming up next week and conspiracy theories on the week after that. But for tonight, we are talking about 40 years of Duran Duran. And I've got two very special guests who are joining me tonight who are lifelong Duranis, very, very knowledgeable on the topic. We got Phil and Andrew. Gentlemen,
hello there.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So introduce yourselves to our audience and just tell a little bit about who you are. Andrew, you go first.
Okay, sure. So I'm Andrew Guradata. I'm a former DJ. I'm a lifelong music fan. My big three bands, the Beatles. I'm a huge Beatles fan and collector. Duran Duran is number 2 and Kiss is number 3. So there's a bit of a diversity there. But yeah, I got into Duran Duran in '84, actually, so not quite from the start, but it was actually The Reflex. The Reflex was a song that grabbed me with that video, that really amazing video that was actually filmed near to me here in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens when we were on the tour promoting or supporting Seven and the Ragged Tiger. The album, and got into them then. Arena came out, which was my first album that I actually had the live album, and I was just hooked, totally hooked. Went backwards, found out all I could about them from before that, and I've been a fan ever since, right up to their latest album just 5-6 years ago, and their new one coming up.
And I was going to say, and the newest one, which is just a few months off,
October 22nd,
and we're going to be talking about that in just a little bit. Phil, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. My name is Phil. I'm a longtime music fan. I grew up listening to the American Top 40 with Casey Kasem. I would write down all the charts. I met Andrew very young in elementary school, and he's the one who turned me on to Duran Duran. And actually, we first saw Duran Duran together at David Bowie's Glass Spider Tour in 1987 at the Montreal Stadium, Olympic Stadium, which was kind of cool. I also have my own music blog. I have my own YouTube channel, which is Pop Music Lovers. You can check it out. I do album reviews. I do concert reviews, talk about a lot of different things. And that's basically it.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw the Glass Spider Tour. Funny enough, I don't remember who it was that opened. I don't think anybody did at our show.
Yeah,
I'm sure there was no opener. I don't remember. But we're going to be talking about some Duran Duran concerts in a little bit.
Sure.
But first, we're going to talk about where everything began. Almost exactly 40 years ago, Duran Duran's first album come out. I'm going to play a little clip. There you go. There it is. So I'm going to play this clip just to kind of give people a visual of where Duran Duran began. This is their first single, Planet Earth. There's the American release.
Canadian actually, but
well, I think we had the same cover
exactly.
as that. So let me play this clip, and then we'll get into that first album and why there are so many different versions of it. All right, here we go. Okay, that would have been at least some people's first exposure to Duran Duran. The first video that they released, they appeared on Top of the Pops right around that same time. But this would be the first exposure. So, what do you think of that video? And let's jump into the album and what that album meant for Duran Duran's career.
I'll go first. So yeah, I mean that was a huge video, but it's so different from what came afterwards, and it's weird because it's directed and produced by Russell McKay, like the same guy who did a lot of the really iconic kind of storyline videos later on. Did that one as well, and you see some of his signature things, like kind of the text shooting across the screen and kind of these weird edits and so on. But at the same time, it's very basic and simple. It's also visually interesting to see like how they looked back then. You know, Andy Taylor with his blonde hair, who at the time was like the only blonde really, and then they all kind of look a little poofy and frilly. You know, the pirate look, I guess. So very different from what came when they became much bigger around the Rio era, right? So
very different.
Yeah. Yeah, very different. Yeah.
So, what do you think of the first album? Go through the track listing, differences between original release, U.S. release, that kind of thing.
So, funny thing, there's actually was a North American release very early on with the same artwork as the British one, but with one track missing. And that's what I've always found interesting. And I don't know, this is probably not visible, but you can kind of see the original British, the UK version, had a track called To the Shore. And for whatever reason, around the same time in North America, it was very limited a release. It wasn't very popular, didn't reach very large, but they removed To the Shore. So it still had, and they also flipped Planet Earth and Girls on Film. Like, so this early copy here starts with Planet Earth. It's like the only version that ever opened with that. But I mean, other than that, I mean, there's some iconic songs on there. Girls on Film, Planet Earth is on there. Careless Memories, which you either love or hate because it's a little different, right? It's a bit rockier. I love it. Like it's one of my favorite songs off the album. Sound of Thunder and Night Boat are very atmospheric, kind of moody and darker songs. And then. Yeah, so then they re-released it again in '83 once they were big, and they added "Is There Something I Should Know," which doesn't fit at all. Like it's crazy that they added it because it doesn't sound like anything else on the album. And it sounded more like the Rio stuff. And I know my personal favorite version is this one here. It's actually a Japanese version because it has To the Shore and it's the only one that has like the full set of all the songs. It's a little weird because it opens with "Is There Something I Should Know," which isn't bad actually. Like opening an album, it's not the worst track to open an album with, but it's a little weird because you're used to Girls on Film. So yeah, all these different variations, but it's a great album, and I think it's somewhat underappreciated because it gets lost in how big Rio became, right?
Oh, sure.
Well, I think Girls on Film should be the opening, especially with the camera clicks.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of doesn't make sense to me to have "Is There Something I Should Know." But my favorite song was left off the album. One of my favorite Duran Duran songs was the B-side to Planet Earth. It's called Late Bar. And if you've heard the term Room 7609, it's on all their playlists. I think it's one of the best songs. I don't know why it was left off. And very interesting, about a half hour before the show, Andrew sent me a link. Apparently, Duran Duran had an original demo with 3 songs, and the album was supposed to be called Utopia.
Yeah.
And Late Bar was one of the 3 songs that was recorded, and there's a cassette, a demo called Utopia with Planet Earth, Late Bar, and I don't remember what the other song.
But I'm not sure now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know why Late Bar was left off. To me, Late Bar would have been a great opener for side 2. I'm not really a fan of side 2 of the album. I know some fans will probably hate me for that, but I think if Late Bar opened up side 2, it would have been fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's funny because, of course, I love side 2. Like, I think Night Boat and Sound of Thunder, Friends of Mine, they're different, but they're really solid songs. And it's weird because their live shows at the time, those were like showpiece songs. These were like the ones that, like, they would always have fans coming back to hear. And then it kind of got downplayed in the as Planet Earth and Girls on Film really took off in the more mainstream. So, yeah.
So what was it that drew you guys to Duran Duran? What was it that first hooked you?
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, it was that. Well, I mean, this was at a time in 1980 when there was the British invasion. I mean, everything was coming through from culture clubs, Eurythmics, Tears for Fears. So I didn't immediately grab onto them, but I don't know, it's the imagery, the hook, the songs were different. I couldn't figure out what the lyrics were about. What is the reflex is about? What is Noon on Monday? It got me thinking. It wasn't just I'm in love with you and you're in love with me. I mean, one of my favorite tracks is New Religion off Rio, and just listen to the words of the lyrics. It isn't these sort of like basic songs. There was a lot of intricacies in the music. New Religion goes from a rap to kind of a sing-along chorus. And that to me makes the song interesting. It's not just the same song all the way through. And to this day, I don't even think Simon knows what the reflex meant. I mean, it's so sad.
He admitted that. He has said, I still don't know what I was
writing. But that's what I like. It makes you think. You're not just hearing the song and going, oh, I love you, baby, or whatever. I just think it was very interesting music. And it's too bad they kind of got labeled as like a boy band. They weren't considered kind of like a real band. They played, they played instruments and stuff. But the magazines in the US kind of put them up like, just like glamour boys. And to me, they were much more than that.
Yeah.
I think so.
Agreed. And certainly, I mean, not just playing their own instruments, writing their own material, which, it completely takes them out of that category. But you talk about the differences between Duran Duran and other things happening at the time. I was just reading an article today, actually, where all the members basically attributed that to Andy. Having that real rock guitarist in the band separated them from all the other Europop synth bands, and it gave them a sound that was different from anything else that was kind of emerging at that time. So how do you respond to that?
I personally agree with that entirely, but it's a little bit more than that, because if the thing that I think pulled me for Duran Duran is, for one thing, they reminded me a lot of the Beatles, maybe not sound wise, but in terms of you couldn't peg them, right? Like some of the tracks were heavy guitar tracks. Some of the tracks had these incredible John Taylor bass lines, which reminded me in a way of like some Paul McCartney bass lines. Some of them were like, with Roger on the drums, and some of them were just pure keyboards, which a lot of other music at the time was, but you couldn't peg them and say they were a keyboard group, because then all of a sudden you'd get something that was really solid guitar riffs, and then you'd say, okay, well, maybe they're more of a guitar. No, then you get the bass lines or the vocals and the poetry of the lyrics as well. As Phil was saying, is like, I mean, Simon Le Bon, like John Lennon in some ways, was a poet. Right, he liked the way words linked together and the way they sounded, without even if they didn't necessarily mean anything. The way they kind of had the rhythms, and you listen to something like "The Chauffeur," which is one of my favorite deep cuts, right? And it's just like it's pure poetry, and it's like, who knows exactly what it means, but you feel it, like, and that definitely was part of what drew me to them as well.
I think even Nick Rhodes says Simon Le Bon is underrated as a lyricist. He's never put up in that category, but if you listen to it, I think it's well deserved. Definitely.
Yeah. Agreed. So, it's interesting to go back and look at 1981 when Duran's first album comes out, and like literally just a couple of months later, MTV launches, and you cannot think of either one of them without the other. They really not only launched at the same time, but they developed at the same time. So talk a little bit about how MTV was an important factor in Duran's launch, especially here in America.
Absolutely was, yeah. I've got in my hands here an RCA video disc of their video album, as they called it at the time, which kind of came out, I guess this would have been around the time of Rio, so when all like the big videos had come out. Like this isn't Laserdisc, this was before Laserdisc, more of an analog video format. I had it on VHS or Beta as well, I'm not sure which now, but yeah, no, those videos were incredibly well done. It was perfect timing, right? Like they had this imagination around visuals, and MTV was there hungry for whatever they could get. And speaking of hungry like the wolf, that video, like a little Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely grabbed them. And it's funny because they didn't just do videos for their singles, which a lot of bands would do. Like they just do a quick promo for their singles. They did stuff. They like there was that video for Nightboat for the first album, which is an incredible video with zombies. You know, before Thriller, right? I was actually reading something recently where they were comparing it to Thriller. You know, and also "Lonely in Your Nightmare," which is a gorgeous song off Rio, has this video that's just beautiful with these native tribe dancers from, I can't remember where that one was filmed. It might have been Sri Lanka or somewhere in that part of the world, but it's just amazing visuals, and you can tell they were having fun with it too, right? Like when you see like in Save a Prayer where they're playing with the elephant, spraying them and stuff, and it's just so much fun. How could you not get into it?
Well, the imagery, I think, played a large part of it. They were a very art band. I'm an artist, I'm an illustrator, and just to have, album covers that look like this. Actually, my favorite is still, artwork-wise, is still Seven and the Ragged Tiger. I mean, this is just beautiful. I mean, you don't get, people don't put that much effort into album covers these days because you get like a little square on your screen and nobody cares. But they cared about the packaging. They cared about how they looked, their presentation, how they sounded. They didn't just come on stage and just, put a show together. And I think they were a visual band. I'm not saying that that's something that's less. I think it was more. The fact that they cared so much for how they looked, how they sounded, what they put out there. Everything was like carefully done. I think that was important.
So talking about MTV a little bit more, and this is, I'm going to be doing in September, I'm going to be doing a 40th anniversary of MTV kind of episode, because how can you not? But it's funny, the difference in attitude between American acts and British acts.
Sure.
And especially some of the younger groups that were coming up at the same time in England and surrounding areas really took to video. Whereas American acts did not want to have anything to do with video. And so MTV starts out as a rock format, but the thing that they have most access to are these young sort of new wavy kind of bands coming from England. Yep. And I think it's fascinating that the American artists kind of like almost, they were a detriment to themselves by not embracing video when as soon as they should have.
No, it's true. I hadn't really thought about that before. When you think about who was coming out in the early days, it was Duran Duran, Culture Club, ABC,
Eurythmics.
Eurythmics. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Eurythmics. I mean, all those bands understood the power of the visual.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say there were a few American artists that did understand it, and they came a bit later, which was Madonna and George Michael.
Oh, yeah. Sure, but that was like that was like 3 years.
3 years after,
yeah. I mean, after the sort of like British invasion had already happened.
Right.
Then Madonna and those folks are seeing that stuff happen, and they understand how important it is. When Huey Lewis and Bruce Springsteen and all those people didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, though, like if it had to do with the fact that if you go back before that, like in the 60s, 70s, there were a lot of British bands who couldn't tour, but they called them promos. They didn't call them videos then, right?
Right.
But going right back to like Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, right? Like the Beatles even did it because they didn't care about touring anymore. So, they couldn't hear themselves over the screaming fans, so they just did those video clips. I'm wondering if maybe it just came out of that. It's like they saw, the Beatles did this, and other bands of that era did this.
Well, there was Queen also had videos as well, very early on.
Yeah, and they were done a lot of times because if the band broke big in like China or Russia or whatever, you couldn't tour. Right. So you would send these clips in order to get them on, music programs or talk shows or whatever. And so it was a good way to break. And, even as a lesser thing, but, like a British band wants to push into America, that was an easier way to do it than to actually send the band over and do a tour where you might not get an audience.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So let's go from the first album and up through. We got Rio and Ragged Tiger. That sort of like, golden sort of iconic period. Right. Talk about, and I'm thinking all the way up through Live Aid. Talk about that period and just how Duran Duran broke out onto the world scene, and what do you think that period influenced later on?
Well, that period basically cemented them as a band. I mean, some people see them as just an 80s band, but they've been going on for like 40 years now. I mean, Seven and the Ragged Tiger had 3 top 10 singles. You know, the Reflex went all the way up to #1. They got Nile Rodgers to reproduce the single for that. They were getting bigger record producers. I mean, that's the era. You could not escape hearing Hungry Like the Wolf on the radio or Union of the Snake. It's still powerful today, and I think it still carried them through many, many years and many downfalls of albums that didn't have hits. It was the golden years of my music, so it's
absolutely, yeah. And I think thinking specifically about the Live Aid, I mean, that was at a point where they'd already kind of gone off and done their kind of splinter groups as well. And they came back together, and you know, Power Station and Arcadia. Power Station actually performed at Live Aid as well. Duran Duran, it was the first time they were performing together in years at that point. And there was that moment, I don't know if you guys remember this or think about this, but when they were doing this song here, View to a Kill, and Simon hit that, he calls it the bum note that was heard around the world, because he was just out of practice, right? Like he hadn't really been doing that music for a while, you know, and he, I guess maybe hadn't warmed up as well as he should have, but and it killed his confidence for a little bit, as I recall. Like he it kind of put him in a little bit of a, wow, I can't believe, wow, you know, the whole world's watching and listen to what I did kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, the fans loved it. I think they were pretty forgiving at the time. Not a whole lot of people outside of the band were talking about it too much. So yeah, but no, I mean, they were so well known. And even thinking about like when Band-Aid came out, like they were so prominent in that, right? Like Simon's vocals, but also like if you watch the video, like John Taylor's probably the most prominent bassist in that video, and you know, Andy on the guitars, you know, kind of leading the way, you know, like it's just, they were music at that time for so many people.
I think one of the best things that I love about Duran Duran is that they were able to sustain a career with doing other projects and breaking up, because my favorite period of Duran Duran is when they kind of split amicably. There was no fights, no nothing, because John Taylor and I'm gonna get the names wrong now, and Andy Taylor wanted to do the power stations with Robert Palmer. And then the 3 other members had nothing to do, and they put out one of my favorite albums, which is Arcadia, So Red the Rose.
Yeah.
And I know it's one of Andrew's favorite albums. To me, this is a Duran Duran album. Absolutely incredible. That they could do these sort of splinter groups and have top 10 hits. Election Day went up to #6 on the charts. And then they can come back together, like you said, for Live Aid, and then do like the View to a Kill or more music. To me, this is the test of a band. There was no egos, there was no fights. Yeah, Andy kind of left in the end, but they were still able to hold it together. And that's what I love about Duran Duran, is they can change, they can sort of metamorph into like different groups, into different sounds. And that's why I love the group. One of the reasons, anyways.
Yeah, agreed. And so Phil put out a thing today on his YouTube channel that was a countdown of his top 15 Duran Duran albums, when they have released so far 14 studio albums, and of course because it includes Arcadia, which I 100% agree with. I do think of it as a proper Duran Duran album. I think it's amazing. It's one of the best albums they ever did. But when you're talking about that period where they're in this sort of like fractured state, talk about Notorious and Big Thing. And I mean, it's not only that you know, not all the members are present for those albums, but stylistically they start to go off in new directions.
Who's going to start?
Go ahead, Phil.
We've been arguing about Notorious for years. So around 1985, 86, I started working and making money. So the first Duran album I think I bought, could have been Arena, but I think it was Notorious. And to this day, I absolutely love this album. Only 3 members. I love Nile Rodgers as a producer. Incredible album. 2 of the singles didn't do very well. I love Meet El Presidente, which is one of their biggest flops, whatever. Most people don't even know the song. Great track. Excellent album. They spent a lot of money on this album. They almost went broke. I think Simon wanted like a whole horn section to come in. Record label was not happy with this. They kind of recouped their money with the lead single. But I love this album, and I think one of their most underrated albums, and I don't know why, is Big Thing.
Yeah.
It's a great album. I Don't Want Your Love, Too Late Marlene. You have the vinyl. I never got the vinyl.
Love, really it's beautiful gatefold. Yeah.
It's if fans out there have never heard this album, take a listen to it. It's excellent. It's one of my top 5 favorite Duran albums, and it's kind of sort of thrown on the wayside because it's kind of after their golden years. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I love this.
I think it was. I agree with you. "Too Late, Marlene" is a fantastic song, but "Palomino" also is gorgeous.
Do You Believe in Shame is one of my favorite Duran songs, which is on there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Notorious. I can tell you, I remember actually the day I bought it after it was after school. I went to the record store, bought it, brought it right home, put it on the turntable, and I'd already heard Notorious, loved Notorious, the actual track, and then it went to like American Science. I'm like, okay, this is okay, and then it hit Skin Trade, and it was like, what is this? I didn't like it.
Really?
I love Skin Trade.
Really,
and
I think the thing was more. There's a certain it's all very different than what they've done before, but within itself there's a certain sameness to the songs. There's no real peaks and valleys. It just kind of, after Notorious, it kind of plateaus for a bit, and I think that's the problem I always had with it. It's also, to me, big Andy Taylor fan, I was missing those guitar crunches. And especially after, like, to me, there's always like a transitional song between albums, right? Like between the debut album and Rio, there's Something I Should Know, which kind of foreshadowed what was coming, right?
Right.
And then the same thing between My Own Way. My Own Way was kind of the transition between Rio and then the first one. And then Is There Something I Should Know kind of transition. And so there was always like this one oddball single. And to me, the singles after their last albums were View to a Kill and The Wild Boys. The Wild Boys, right? Like these are two really kind of heavy guitar sounding crunchies. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe not forever, but I'd like to hear an album of Duran Duran kind of doing that. And I didn't get it. I was kind of hoping for that. And even with Notorious, I mean, there's that good kind of funky, guitars, but a lot of the songs didn't even have that. Like it went into, remember I said like Duran Duran, you couldn't niche them. This was an album you could niche. This was an album that kind of had a very chic sound. And there's nothing, I like chic. I'm actually, not a huge chic fan, but I like them. But I didn't want a full album of that, and that's what kind of let me down on Notorious.
That totally makes sense. I totally get
it. Well, the guitarist at the time was Nile Rodgers.
Yeah,
so, the sound you could see.
I prefer Big Thing. I really like Big Thing as an album, and it's funny because I'm not a huge Warren Cucurullo fan, but to me, this album, he's stellar on it. Like the stuff he does, like especially like the Lakeshore Driving at the last the instrumental track, which is mostly him, and especially like Phil and I were saying, our first tour was actually they were doing like an early version of that at that point, and it was just brilliant. Like it was just like the crunchy kind of and it's just a much more flow to it, I think, as an album, right? Like it just it has those peaks and valleys. It has certain songs that kind of lull you in, like what is it? It's Too Late, Marlene, and so on. It kind of lulls you in, and then it picks up again, and so to me, it's just a fuller album. I think as an album, I enjoy more.
That makes sense. I do like Warren a lot, and I really like some of the stuff that once he became more and more integrated into the band, I like the influence that he had on the sound and the songwriting and everything. But another one is the drummer position has changed as well, and that changes the sound too. And one of the there's I think two main drummers on Big Thing, and one of them is Sterling Campbell, who played with a lot of other bands and played with Bowie for many years, and that changes the sound as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think maybe that's also a bit of what was missing in Notorious for me is that solid drum sound. I mean, if I think of the first three albums all had a very distinct, because it wasn't just that he was a very distinctive drummer, Roger, and still is, but his kit at the time was very distinct. That electric Rototom sound, right? That it kind of very typical of the era. Like Miami Vice theme has a really similar sound, like right? With that gone, it wasn't on Notorious, and they didn't really replace it with anything solid to me. So again, my opinion on Notorious.
I mean, that makes sense, because when you think of like some of the there's really iconic, there's not many, but there are a few really iconic drum fills, like in Hungry Like the Wolf, and that drum sound is so specific.
Or the Wild Boys.
Or the Wild Boys. I was going to say.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, the Wild Boys video. The song is okay. The video, holy moly.
Yeah.
Absolutely my favorite Duran video.
Who did that video? I can't remember now. It was
I
somebody
don't remember either. It was,
Yeah.
It's interesting because you were talking earlier about Mulcahy, we were talking about the very first video. A lot of these video directors, I mean, nobody, they were kind of inventing the art form of the music video. And a lot of these, it's funny to watch like Julian Temple and Mulcahy and some of these people. When you watch like the ones who worked with a specific artist for a while, you see their style develop. You see them become more confident filmmakers.
And it's funny because Russell Mulcahy, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if either of you remember, he when Queer as Folk USA started, he edited the first episode, and you could see a lot of the same kind of cross cuts and fades.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I
didn't know that. That's it. Yeah. That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, if you're talking about videos, one of the most disappointing things for me, because I love Notorious, I love that album. I think it's their worst videos. Like, they're not good videos. I'm sorry. I don't know who produced them. I don't want to offend them. I don't love them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like Skin Trade and Presidente.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I was just reading because whoever did the Notorious video was the same person who did Steve Winwood Higher Love. And you see it. The very same like black and white visuals with the women. And then, like it's a very similar video. So yeah.
And that one's okay, but the next two were nothing. I think they had no budget at that point. I don't know.
The Mito Presidente one was okay. I like that one.
Which one?
Mito Presidente video.
I'll have to rewatch that. I can't remember it.
And it's funny, I haven't watched any of those videos in many, many, many years, but I do remember liking Skin Trade at the time. So
I love the song.
I do too. Yeah. It's a fantastic song. It's probably my favorite song on that album.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So the only time I ever saw Duran was on the Big Thing tour.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I remember it was pretty much the first half of the show was all songs from the two most recent albums, Notorious and Big Thing, which was that lineup that had made those albums. And then the second half of the show was all the older songs and the big hits and everything. And they sort of did, they had released 12-inch dance mixes of Big Thing and All She Wants Is. So they kind of recreated that whole 12-inch, like they played the extended version of it live. And it was a great show, but that's the only time I've ever had the chance to see them. So I want to know, when have you guys seen them and what was your experiences with them?
Go ahead.
4.
Awesome. So I've seen them 4 times. The first time I saw them solo was for the 1993, I guess, the Wedding album tour. And for some reason, I could not remember that concert, but I won tickets. You had to fax in a picture of a wedding because it was the cover of the album. And I remember faxing in the picture with my best friend, and I literally got home, got in the house, and got a call that I won tickets. And I was like, was I the only person that entered? It was so weird. Anyways, I don't remember that show, but the next time I saw them was in 2004 when they reformed for the Astronaut tour. And that is one of the most amazing concerts, hands down, I have ever seen. First of all, the venue. You got to be at a good venue. I did not like the Olympic Stadium with David Bowie and Duran. It was really bad. The Bell Centre in Montreal was built for music, the brand new center. The 5 members, they were all in form. The sound was incredible, the most amazing concert. They did Careless Memories. They did everything. I think they did like New Religion and Hold Back the Rain and new songs. That was incredible. The last show I've seen them at was was at the Washington State Fair in Puyallup, Washington. And that was with Nile Rodgers playing.
Oh, wow.
And to me, to see them do Notorious with Nile Rodgers on the guitar.
Amazing.
I mean, I came home and I kept telling that to people, and nobody could care less. I love record producers. I'm the type of person that'll know who produced a record, who wrote it. And to me, to have the record producer who played on the song playing with them was just heaven. So that show was really good. It was an outdoor venue, not as good as an indoor show, but I don't know, incredible. They're a great band live, I think so.
So in my case, the first time was with David Bowie at the Olympic Stadium, and I guess that would have been 87.
87.
Yeah, thank you. the sound there was horrible. If anybody knows the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, it has all the great acoustics of a toilet bowl. It's just horrible. Never again would I see a concert there, no matter who it is. The second time was actually way later at the Pop Trash tour of all things, and I don't even remember why or how I ended up deciding to see that. But it was weird because it didn't sell. The tickets didn't sell very well. The album wasn't doing very well. Most of the people that were there were fans, so they didn't care. Like, they're seeing Duran Duran, and there was this energy at the end. They actually came back for an encore as usual, and they came back again, and they said, because people were just cheering that loud, and the lights actually came on and dimmed again, and they came out and said, "This is weird, guys. Like we weren't prepared for this." And they redid a song they'd already done that night, but it was just like this energy that was just amazing. Third time was the Astronaut tour as well, which was a great concert. Absolutely amazing concert. Good mix of new stuff, older stuff, and stuff in between. And what was cool was actually hearing Andy Taylor doing some of the like Notorious Big Thing and Wedding Album. Yeah, they didn't do anything for Pop Trash, but Wedding Album stuff like that era of stuff was pretty cool to hear. And then the last time was actually the tour for the All You Need Is Now. I guess I can't remember the actual name of the tour, Diamond in the Mine maybe. But I saw that was actually kind of a weird thing too, because it undersold. We were supposed to be fairly far back, and they ended up removing like the front row, so we were like fourth row in the end. Like, when we got there, we're sitting, we're like, this can't be our seats, this isn't what we did. And we're like practically on top of the stage, like we were spitting distance, and it was amazing. And it was Simon Le Bon's birthday that night.
Oh, cool.
So they got him a cake, and they brought out the cake, and they sang happy birthday to him on stage. It was an amazing show.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the weird thing, I don't know, was that you probably didn't, I don't think you saw that tour, Phil, but they had these weird projections of like faces. There were like these face-shaped screens, and they projected faces of the band members on there moving, and it was kind of weird. Like, you know that thing where you have something that's robotic and it looks not quite human, so it looks a little odd, and it had that effect, and it was a little disturbing, but it was cool. Like, it added a lot.
That sounds like their new video.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it was odd, but it was really cool, and it was a great show too, and it was Dominic Brown was, I guess, the guitarist on that tour, and it was the first time seeing him live, and it was really, I really liked him actually. Yeah, no, it was solid.
Okay, I want to. There's so many albums that I want to like talk about specifically, but very much I want you to talk about your first impression of Astronaut when it came out.
I know Andrew doesn't like it as much. I heard "Reach Up for the Sunrise" and I went, "They're back." That was it. With top, and I love the songs. I know Andrew doesn't like it as much, but there's
All You Need Is Now. No. Oh, Phil, no. This album has grown on me. If this is the one we're talking about, I thought you were talking about the upcoming one. No,
we're talking about Astronaut.
Oh, Astronaut.
Yeah, I know you don't like Paper Gods.
No, Paper Gods. Oh, I don't see. I couldn't even find my copies of. I've got 2 copies of Paper Gods. I couldn't even find them. Like, that's how little I listen to them. I have a huge dislike. I like one song really strongly on that, which is "Last Night in the City." Love that song. Everything else just didn't grab me, and it's disappointing because the one before, like "All You Need Is Now," is one of my top 10 for sure, maybe even top 5 Duran Duran albums. So this is like, I guess right now 2 albums ago. Yeah, no, and that was so solid. And then when Paper Gods came out, I mean, the opening track was kind of meanders. I thought, okay, it's got to get better. It got really good for Last Night in the City, and then it never recovered to me. And I know Phil loves that album. So
I don't know. I think some of the songs on here, I think, are some of the best Duran songs. "You Kill Me with Silence" to me is like the Chauffeur Part 2. Love that song. "Face for Today." I'm trying to think of all the songs. I don't know. I like the production, but I like Nile Rodgers more and a few of the other people. I love "Astronaut." That title track to that song is excellent.
Yeah.
"What Happens Tomorrow." I'm trying to think of some of the other songs.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny for me, they've fallen into for me personally, an every other album thing, where I loved Astronaut, Red Carpet Massacre. I've recently gotten more into it, like, because that's the one that's Timbaland is the producer. It's got Justin Timberlake on a couple of tracks. It didn't grab me at first. It sounded off, and especially there's the beatboxing songs, which I always joke they're saying figgy figgy figgy. What is figgy figgy? What is, like, it just didn't sound like a Duran Duran should sound, but it's grown on me. And it's another song like Falling Down has really grown on me. I didn't like it at first, now I really like it. Then All You Need Is Now, I love it, and then Paper Gods is another one that I've so far, maybe it'll grow on me one day, but so far it just hasn't grabbed me. So I have good expectations now for the next album. So.
Okay, so before we went live, we were talking online about your favorite deep tracks.
Yes.
So let's say somebody has sort of like a cursory knowledge of Duran, or they're a new fan, or they're interested in getting into them. What are some of the deep tracks that you think this is something that really sums up Duran Duran from all of their, their early period and their later stuff too?
New Religion.
That's a good one.
If you've never heard New Religion, it was not a single. I don't know how it wasn't. That song to me is unlike any song in the 80s. You got him rapping, talking. You got the chorus. I don't know. It's like, go listen to that song. I don't think it's just an 80s song. That and my favorite B-side, Late Bar, if you've never heard it. Yeah. I would check those two out. But yeah, I think New Religion is just out of time. For me anyways. I don't know what some of Andrew's deep cuts are.
Yeah, I think a lot of the album tracks on Rio, like Hold Back the Rain, not the version. So it's another one of these weird things with different versions. Rio is another album that has different versions. And the UK version, to me, isn't that great, and it's amazing to me that it's as popular as it is, because the American version is actually, or the North American version is so much better. And Hold Back the Rain is one of the songs where it's twice as long. Like there's twice as many lyrics. There's extra choruses and verses, and it's a really solid track. It's a great. It's dancey and it's got solid words. It's really good. Now it's funny. My personal favorite Duran Duran song, most people I think would consider a deep cut because it was never a single. It's not a particularly popular one, but it's the song Seventh Stranger off of Seven of the Ragged Tiger. It's very similar to The Chauffeur, which is a little bit better known. It also wasn't a single, but it's a bit better known, especially if for more kind of intermediate, I guess, fans of Duran Duran who've heard a little bit more than just the singles. But they still do The Chauffeur live. They haven't done Seventh Stranger in quite a while, but it's got that same mood, but to me it's a little bit better. It especially has a really cool solo, guitar solo by Andy Taylor in the middle of it, which is why I like it. Trying to think of some more recent ones, because I think a lot of the stuff off of Astronaut, like Nice. Not my wife's favorite Duran Duran song is Nice off of Astronaut, of all things. Like from everything across their whole spectrum. It's like one day she actually said to me, I think that's my favorite Duran Duran song. I'm like, wow, more than anything off Rio or any of the early albums like that. That's solid, and it's a great song. It is like it's dancey and it's got great words and it's really got grippy. It's a really great track. So that's one I would probably list as well. And off All You Need Now, there's a bunch of beats like Stay and there's a lot of good ones there. Sorry, Phil, you were about to say?
There's the track they did with Animatronic off of All You Need Is Now. I forget the name of the song. Safe, I think, in the heat of the moment.
Safe. Sorry, that's what I was thinking.
Which is really cool. Andrew's already mentioned it, but my favorite Duran Duran song of all time is Hold Back the Rain. Was never a single, and I forgot to mention it, but great. Blame It on the Machines from All You Need Is Now. If people want to listen to something recent that's more current, I would check that out as well.
Right.
It's a deep cut.
What about Wedding Album? I personally love that album a lot. What are some of your favorite ones off of that?
Oh, you want me to go? Oh, my love and hate with the Wedding Album. It's one of the most important Duran Duran albums, let's face it. If not for that album, I mean, I'm sure they would have continued, but if not for that album, I don't know if they would have still been having hits, would have been as big. That album brought them out of the 80s. They had the huge hit Ordinary World and Come Undone. And people today know those songs more, youngsters, than their earlier hits. I've actually noticed. I know people in their 20s that know Ordinary World. I don't love that album. I like the singles. To me, it's a more rockier album, kind of not my vibe. It doesn't have as much of this, I don't know, the synth sound. So I don't love it. I think Andrew likes it better than me. So.
I definitely like it more. Yeah, this is another one. No. I think I agree with you to a point in that it's not as solid as I think a lot of people think of it as, but I think they give it a bit more credit because it did kind of pull them back out of the little bit of a lull that they'd been in for a bit. But I think like
Yeah.
Too Much Information, Ordinary
Yep.
World, none of the above. It's to me an incredibly underrated song, and it's really deep lyrics. Like I really like that one, and of course Come Undone. Come Undone, huge. I love that song. I think
That is a fantastic
it
song.
is. It is. It really is.
But I think that this is really Warren
Yeah.
emerging as a much more prominent presence, even more so than on the previous album, Liberty. I think that this one is very much a Warren album.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I think he really drove the sound on this one.
Anybody want to say anything about Liberty?
I was going to ask that too, because I think it's the one, even for some of the later ones, you know, Liberty's the one that seems to always be forgotten. It seems to be the one that no one really ever references. So go ahead, please.
I don't know if I want to talk about it. I love the two singles. I love Violence of Summer and Serious. You know what? I hadn't listened to that album in probably like 2 decades. I had the cassette. I shoved it aside, collecting dust. And I took it out a few weeks ago when you told me we were doing the video here, the podcast. And I had a hard time listening to the album. I don't know what to say. I don't want to insult any Duran fans. A lot of the songs I really couldn't get through some of the songs. I thought I didn't like them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liberty kind of, it's this weird kind of midpoint, right? Because some of the stuff feels like Serious, and even Liberty kind of feel like older, like Duran to a degree, but most of it is they're moving into this new direction. I don't like Violence of Summer. I find it has one of the blandest choruses they've ever done, if that makes sense. Like the violence of summer and love, like it doesn't do much for me. So I agree with you, Phil, but for different reasons. Like it's kind of an album I don't go back to very often, and it's kind of mostly forgettable. But it's funny because there are some solid tracks on here, but they don't stick enough for you to kind of want to say, hey, I feel like listening to Liberty today, except maybe Serious. Serious is like one song that I really liked. And I think actually when it came out, I didn't really appreciate it as much. It's later on when I started singing. I didn't even realize it was a single, I think, because it must have come in one very quickly.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, actually.
Or maybe it was only in the UK. I don't know. But when I was reading something, it said, oh, Serious was, and then I saw the video. I was like, there was a video for this? And then, yeah. There's another song, I'm trying to remember which one it was, Breath After Breath, that I didn't know had a video, and I was one day I had YouTube on. I had YouTube on, just random Duran Duran, and this video comes on. I'm like, how is there a Duran Duran video? I don't know. I'd never seen this before. And this was just recently, like a few weeks ago. Breath After Breath, which was off the Wedding album, and it's a really good song that I'd never really appreciated until that moment, actually, watching that video. But that's another one that kind of just gets lost, I guess, in that kind of middle era of Duran Duran.
I'm always blown away when I'm doing something on YouTube and a music video that I never knew had ever been produced comes up. I'm a big fan of I'm a big Prince fan.
Okay.
But then when Wendy and Lisa split off and did their own thing, I was going through YouTube one time and found all these videos that they had shot that I didn't even know had ever been made.
Oh, cool.
Because MTV never played them.
Right.
Night Flights never played them, so they had like 4 or 5 videos that I didn't even know existed. And I love discovering stuff like that. So anyway, what's we talk about Arena.
Okay.
What did, because Phil, you were thinking that may have been your first album.
I think so, because I think it was Notorious, but I have a copy of Arena and I can't remember where I got it from.
Right.
I have it here, actually. I'll get it here. Of course, famous for the Wild Boys. Again, their imagery, the artwork. I love this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. They're one of the early bands to put out kind of a live album. A lot of the 80s artists, I don't remember there being live albums from other artists at the time. I don't think, Eurythmics or Tears for Fears was putting out a live album.
No.
None of the music I was listening to. So it's a great album.
Right.
It is. It was actually the first album I owned on vinyl for sure. Because before that, when I first got in with the Reflex, I had somebody tape me a copy of Seven of the Ragged Tiger so I could hear it, and I didn't buy it until after. But Arena came out, and I think I ended up getting 2 copies or 3 copies for Christmas because people knew I was getting into Duran Duran in my family, so they bought me it. And yeah, it's a phenomenal. It's actually incredibly clever album, I'm going to say, for putting it out when they did, because there they were at kind of a peak of popularity, but at the same time, a lot of people didn't know their full back catalog, right? So by putting this out and having tracks on it, like, because especially a lot of North America might not have heard, Planet Earth, or, so like, okay, let's put that on there. Careless Memories for sure. Like a lot of North Americans had never heard Careless Memories, even though it was in the UK. So by doing that, and then on top of that, they paired it with the that weird Arena and Absurd Notion movie, which was very bizarre. But on top of that, they put out a concert video as Lights Go Down, and a making of with Sing Blue, like I think it was just called Blue Silver actually. So this trio of videos that came out all at once, a bombardment of stuff around like this piece of work, right? Like and visual again with the visuals, because visual was so important to them. And I mean, definitely as the Lights Go Down, that concert video was what got me into like The Chauffeur and Seven Stranger and a lot of those tracks that weren't singles. Because before then, I heard Hungry Like the Wolf, I heard Rio, big singles in North America. I hadn't heard these now we call them deep cuts, right? Or New Religion. That's the first place I heard New Religion was
me too.
Yeah.
The first time I heard New Religion, the exact same thing.
And it's like, this was an amazing version, and then I heard the real version, which is above that, like it's even better, right? So yeah, no, they were very smart of them, like to kind of introduce like a lot of people to their deep cuts and back catalog by putting this out. Yeah, no, it's a great album and a great idea.
Like most people would have padded it with hits, but that's not exactly what they did.
Exactly. And we were talking earlier about how they were sort of lumped in with the boy bands and they were seen as a video band. Do you think that this was sort of a statement on their point? Do you think that this is, yes, we are musicians. Yes, we are a live band. Yes, we perform. That's how I kind of always saw it at the time.
Interesting question, because I think they were trying that even with Seven and the Ragged Tiger. Like
I agree.
Even the cuts on there are kind of more, of a music lover's album as opposed to the pop. I mean, Rio is as well, but it's more subtle, right? Like you have, if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. You'll hear, oh, this is a great pop album, just like X, Y, and Z. But yeah, Seven and the Ragged Tiger kind of strayed from that. Like, I mean, when Union to Snake came out, I think it was so different. It was different enough from Rio, and it was like, there's again, when I get into like you couldn't niche it, right? Like it's got that keyboard opening, but it's got that from Roger and the guitar. So yeah, I think definitely they took that up a level for sure with Arena, and especially if you were watching the Wild Boys video or any of that like video stuff, like Andy Taylor is so prominent in that. And by then he had the long hair, and he didn't look like the rest of the band, and he didn't look like what people would stereotype Duran Duran looking like, right?
True.
And even John Taylor to a degree was kind of heading in that direction as well. So yeah, no, I think you've hit on something good there. Yeah, for sure.
I think every step there, even a year later, they have the only James Bond song that went to number one.
That's
so
true.
I mean, that whole era was just, it's crazy and so different.
Yeah.
I didn't think to grab it out of my collection. I should have done, but I didn't think about it before we started the show. There was a thing, and I don't remember what year it came out, but there was a series of concerts in England called the Secret Policeman's Ball, and it was sort of like fundraisers, and it was a lot of acoustic stuff. And I bought volume 3 on CD because Kate Bush is on it. So I'm playing it, and it's a great collection of stuff. But then there's this live acoustic version of Save a Prayer, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
Oh my God. Find it. It is absolutely staggering how gorgeous that song is.
Well, didn't the song re-chart in the US as a live version, or am I wrong? I think the song didn't make it.
It did, yeah. And
did it really?
That was the Arena version. It wasn't what
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that it was released as a single from Arena.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Went to number 16, I think, on the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah.
As reported by Casey Kasem. All right, gentlemen, we are coming up on an hour.
Okay.
Phil,
Alan?
Yes.
Alan, what's your favorite Duran Duran song?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
What is your favorite song, favorite album? Come on.
I was not prepared for you to turn that back around on me. Jesus. I really love Ragged Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I also, if we're only talking studio albums, then I can't include Arena, but I do dig Arena.
Yeah.
I think it's a great album. There was something about the time that Notorious and Big Thing came out.
Okay.
That I was really attuned to what they were doing, and I really liked, hearing the new stuff with a new configuration of the band, and of course, seeing them on the Big Thing tour was a big moment for me.
Right,
it's a big thing.
You got it. And I'm also gonna say, as much as I love the Wedding album and Astronaut, I am going to say that one of my favorite albums is Arcadia.
Oh yeah.
So Red the Rose.
Absolutely.
What a phenomenal album. Yeah. I remember when the first single came out, I was like, holy cow, that is incredible. And of course, you got Grace Jones.
Yeah.
Who just eats everything around her because she's so amazing.
Yeah.
But then I got the album and I was like, damn, this is a good album.
It is.
So it really sold me on election day, but from there, I loved everything on it. So those are sort of my picks. As far as favorite song goes, holy smack. I really love Sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
I loved how that just really propelled them, back into a limelight that they hadn't really had in a long time. And it's such a great song. Palomino is great.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. That's I wasn't prepared to have that question.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so Phil, one more time, where can people find your YouTube show?
It's called Pop Music Lovers. You can find me on YouTube. You can find my artwork on Phil Fogel Art on Instagram if you want as well. It's not I draw a lot of music artists, but otherwise on YouTube, Pop Music Lovers, you can find me there.
And today's episode was a countdown of all 15 favorite.
15 albums in the order, and I'm still debating if I put them in the right spot.
I mean, that's the sign of really knowing your stuff, that you will never be able to have a definitive.
Yeah, I know.
And Andrew, where can people find you if they were looking to hang out with you online?
I don't have anything that really.
You should have stuff. You should have a blog.
I've been very strongly considering doing something similar to what Phil's doing and starting it with a top 15 now Duran Duran countdown, just to disagree with Phil. But
you should do it.
You have a YouTube channel already, so
I do, but I haven't really used it for anything. But I mean, I'm around Facebook. That's about it right now.
And with our last couple of minutes, I do want to talk about the two of you have known each other for most of your life. You've been best friends forever. So just talk about your friendship and how Duran Duran played a part in that.
Well, I mean, we basically went to school together. We went to elementary school together. Andrew's mom was like a second mom to me. I lived in his house. And we grew up in the 80s listening to Culture Club, Duran Duran. I remember being in his room and playing the albums and stuff. And him going, you got to hear this new song.
There's one thing we could talk about, Phil. What? Utopia. So we got into lyric writing back when we were in our late teens, and we were so heavily influenced by Duran Duran, it wasn't funny. Like a lot of our stuff, especially when we collaborated together, a project that we ended up calling Utopia, not knowing at the time, I didn't know really until this recently that was going to be the original name of the first Duran Duran album, which is brilliant. But no, we wrote these songs that were very, very like the bordering plagiarism probably, but but I mean, but I have firm memories of being in school and talking about So Red the Rose with Phil, like in gym class PE, whatever we would have called it at the time. But just kind of saying, hey, talking about the different songs and disagreeing which we liked and which we didn't like, and so on. So it's been a constant thing for at least since early 80s, or mid 80s.
And you can be sure that if I love the Duran Duran song, Andrew won't.
We both like.
I hate it, so
we both like Hold Back the Rain. Absolutely.
True, that's true.
Okay, so Duran Duran is going to be coming up in conversation again on my September 1st show when we talk about the 40th anniversary of MTV, because how can you not talk about Duran Duran when you talk about the origins of MTV? So I, hope you guys will be listening in, or maybe we'll be able to have you on that show again.
Sure, gladly.
Thank you both so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks
I
for the
really
invite.
appreciate it. I really enjoyed hearing your insights on all these different amazing Duran Duran albums.
Cool.
So for everybody watching, thank you so much. We will be back next Sunday night for the SNL musical guests episode. Until then, take care. Have a good week.
All right.
And all right, y'all have a great night, and I'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.